Maybe if you watch our videos, you think that I'm obsessed with fruit. And I might be obsessed with fruit. I like using fruit to mark the passage of time. I think it's perfect, actually. Especially here in 𝗼𝗪, where the street vendors' wares are changing all the time. So you can see that it never stops. The passage of change, the passage of time is ongoing, but also cyclical. The same fruits come back year after year, reminding us that time is always going, but maybe where it's going is nowhere.
Tree.
Oh, nice. A few weeks ago, it was 𝗤𝗵 season. You might know these as dragon's eye fruits. They're little teeny brown fruits that are fleshy and chewy with a big pit inside. �𝗵s are actually a specialty of 𝗼𝗪. They grow like crazy here. And 𗤤𝗵 season always reminds me of a time a few years ago when our photographer friend brought us out to the 𝗤𝗵 Woods Park here in 𝗼𝗪 to take our picture. So we spent the afternoon force-feeding each other �𝗵s and holding big piles of brown sticks. It was like fun in a weird way. That a lot of stuff of being a foreigner in China is fun and weird. And in the woods, you can actually pick the fruits off the trees. There's so many that like everybody who visits can pick those fruits just by visiting the park, which I think is pretty rare. In terms of public parks, you're not supposed to pick the stuff. The thing is, I hate �𝗵s. There's so much work, and just for like this little fleshy, succulent bite that doesn't really have any flavor. In fact, recently, my neighbor in the elevator, she tried to pawn some off on me that her coworker had given her at work, and now I know how to say real Chinese no, so I was just like, I don't eat those. She's like, I have so many, and if you eat so many, they have no taste. Next up is pomegranates are about to be in season, which those are also a lot of work, but I think it's totally worth it. I really like pomegranates. And that reminds me of another time. I had a student who, her family had a pomegranate farm, so she brought me fresh pomegranates. We had like way too many to eat. She brought us so many. I think that's the thing when you have if you're not farmers, but you have a farm, so you're not necessarily selling your fruit, you end up with like so much of it, and you need to just give so much to all your friends and family. But anyway, this was actually when I was teaching in 𝗵𝗪. The school turned out to be a terrible place to work. She was not a good student, but she actually was a really nice person. She was of the 𝗣𝗂 culture, which is an ethnic minority in that region, and so she answered all my nosy questions about that, and we just like gossiped what it's like to be a young adult. That's the thing about English teaching, is like you could talk about anything in the guise of conversation practice. People like to talk about themselves, and I like to ask because I am nosy. Yeah, I hope next time. But now it's Pomello season. Pomellos are a cousin of the grapefruit, specific to to Southeast China, I think, and Luzhou has got them in abundance. When we first got here, we bought them a few times and we thought they were grapefruits that had gone wrong. They have a much fleshier peel, and the fruit inside is surprisingly dry for a citrus fruit. But I have since learned to appreciate them. They're a little bit tart, very dry in a liquid sense, but also kind of like a taste sense. They're like a good ginger ale or a Campari soda. And they're downright refreshing, you know, once you know what you're in for. August 14th of last year, Peter went into the hospital for what turned out to be a 10-week stay and more than a year of recovery. It was a pretty hard time. Death was on the table for a while, and then even when it wasn't certain that Peter would ever be the same. I mean, I guess he's not, we're both not, but in a way that turned out fine. But when something traumatic like that happens to you, you realize how many people in your life have also gone through something really hard. And that in itself is pretty, it's not inspiring, but it was helpful to know, you know, life will go on. They made it, and maybe I will too. But it means we're still in the middle of an anniversary of a pretty shitty time. About 5 or 6 weeks into Peter's hospital stay, he got transferred into the physical therapy ward, which it still wasn't a wonderful time, but it was a marked improvement. I'd say we went from living, waking nightmare to like, this kind of sucks, but it's livable. A big part of why that transition was so good was that Peter's physical therapist was such a great, friendly guy. He spoke English, which was really important, but he also, I mean, he loved his job, he loved chatting. He was one of the first staff members to treat Peter like a person rather than a patient, or even worse, foreign curiosity. So that improved things quite a lot. The therapist also, in his home in the countryside, that's where he lived, had a Pomello farm, and he kept promising us that he would bring us one in. And then he did. He brought us a Pomello, and we had a giant feast that night on Peter's hospital bed. We got takeout from our favorite pork rib place, which itself represented kind of a big victory, because solid food had been an issue. So we had that tasty meal. We watched some American TV on the iPad. We had just discovered the show 𝗖𝗵cie, which was hilarious. It's now canceled, but it was a bright spot of our night. And then we had a farm fresh Pomello for dessert. Peter actually discovered he has a mild citrus allergy, and his fingers and his mouth went a little bit numb. So he doesn't quite like them as much as I do, but I developed a real affinity for the fruit. Last weekend, a friend invited me out to their countryside home for a dinner party where they also had pomelo trees. So part of the afternoon activity was picking and eating pomelos, which was delicious, and they sent me home with a giant bag full. And that's when it clicked for me a couple days later. Was I like Pomellos because they make me think Peter's not going to die. Associating with that time that was the reemergence of hope, actually, and so it's after kind of hard memories to remember that there was also a memory of hope. I mean, we all are gonna die one day, but not today. It's pretty tart.